Hello, New Zealand. The Safe and Effective Roadshow, you've probably heard about it. It's been online everywhere. It's basically a quest for common sense, compassion, and justice. To be quite honest, over the last few years, we've seen way too many injuries. We've seen people really suffer. There hasn't been an acknowledgement about this. So this roadshow is not just a conference full of doctors speaking about medical jargon and statistics, but it's actually about hearing from those who have been injured and how they've navigated through the system and what have they done. Pretty much, this conference is all about making awareness of what's actually happened, putting those responsible or the system on notice, so to speak. And so if you know anybody that has perhaps been injured, because many people, as you've been aware, they've been coerced or maybe chosen to get a medical procedure under the promise that it was safe and effective. And now we have absolute categorical evidence that it was the opposite. And so if you know anybody that perhaps would benefit from a conference like this, please share this video with them and leave a comment. Now, I'd love to welcome Kim. Kim, thank you very much for coming on. Now, Kim Knight, the Kiwi Health Detective. First of all, tell us a little bit about what the Kiwi Health Detective is and what motivated you to be part of the Safe and Effective Roadshow.
Sure. Well, I've been working for 18 years in clinic, helping people get to the root cause of their mysterious health problems. And that led me to take the name, so to speak, of the Kiwi Health Detective. But then in the last 4 years, I found myself using those skills, if you like, to look at the bigger picture of what is going on in the world today, in particular in the field of medicine. But as I've discovered, medicine is interconnected with absolutely everything else. It's like a join the dots exercise. And it's taken me back to mainly looking at the last 150 years and really seeing, why is it that our health system is collapsing today? Why is it that we have these horrendous health statistics in general, never mind the COVID vaccine, but 80% of adults have in the world or in the Western world have a chronic illness. I mean, that's crazy. 30% of the budget in most Western countries is spent on the health budget. So why is it when we have great medicine that people are so sick? And as I've tracked back, I've really found some alarming information that really looks like we are deliberately being harmed through toxic food, toxic agriculture, trying to poison our water now with fluoride and other harmful substances, EMF. And I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but it's just made me see a bigger picture. It's really opened my eyes to what the world is and what medicine is. And also, one of the things that I could never understand was I often spoke at conferences, and I was usually the only natural health practitioner at these mainstream, what I call mainstream medical doctor conferences. And I went there because I'd been working with people, helping them to heal from conditions that their doctors were telling them, as I was told, it's either untreatable or it's incurable. And so I healed myself, and then I was working with other people and they were healing themselves, and they weren't using any medication and they weren't using supplements. They were just able to instigate the natural healing powers of their body. And I thought, well, surely more people will want to know about this. And I'm not saying I'm the only practitioner who's been doing this. There are many out there, but I just felt like surely the mainstream, the system, they will want to know about this, because wouldn't this be useful if people could be taught how to self-heal? So I would go to these conferences, and often a nurse would sidle up to me and whisper in my ear, well, listen, I can't be shown to be saying that I agree with you, but I really like what you're talking about, and I wish that there was more of this type of approach around. But overall, I wasn't making a dent at all. I just felt like I was completely not being heard. And I was getting very frustrated and could not understand it, because this is really good information, and this is what we need to reduce the budget and to help people with their health. And then when COVID hit and I started really listening to a lot of, I mean, I've watched thousands, I think now, of documentaries and videos on many, many different topics. And all the pieces of the puzzle just fell into place. And I thought, aha, they don't want to know. And I know that you know about the Flexner report, which happened back in 1910, when the big bankers commissioned this report of the state of the US medical system. And back then there were 2,000 homeopathic hospitals, and natural medicine was the way. And they basically, I can't remember how they did it, but they basically pushed all that medicine aside and instituted the big pharma model. That was when it was the late 1800s, early 1900s when it started to happen. And interestingly enough, J.D. Rockefeller, who is one of the protagonists here in this story, because it really is like a movie script, his father was a traveling snake oil salesman, literally. He would travel around with his petrochemicals and he was selling them as medicine. This is J.D. Rockefeller's father, who was a terrible person, let's say. His history is very interesting. I won't go into that now. But basically, what's so ridiculous is that natural therapists have been labeled for decades as witches and snake oil salesmen.
Quackery.
Sorry?
Quackery.
Quackery, yeah, thank you. That's it. Yeah, quackery. We're the ones who've been labeled that. And yet the truth is, it's the other way around. And what also shocked me is learning how the petrochemical industry were the ones who funded the medical schools and use their products in medicines, and that chemotherapy was originally a byproduct of petroleum production. I mean, it just boggles the mind when you start to hear the truth of how the medical system was set up, and it all ties back to these elite groups and the bankers. They fund absolutely everything. And then after the war as well, all the poisonous, toxic chemicals that were used in World War II, the industries then turned themselves into pesticide and herbicide factories. And so all the poisons that they were using then are now being used on our foods. And for years, I'd go into supermarkets, and I still do it now when I go to the supermarket. There's less and less that I can buy in a supermarket these days. And unfortunately, the monopoly of supermarkets is just getting stronger and stronger. Here where I live, we have one supermarket, one chain, one brand. It's insane. But walking into supermarkets and looking at all the aisles and aisles and aisles of packaged processed foods with all their additives and preservatives, which are only getting more and more. You get the same food these days and it's got 10 more additives and preservatives than it had 5 years ago, and it doesn't actually need it, but they just put more and more in. And wondering, why is it, when we absolutely know what is healthy for a human being, why is it that they're doing this? And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's all part of the plan. And there is a bigger plan, which is just like, way beyond most people's ability to really fully integrate and believe, because it's so beyond belief. It literally is like a movie. But then, talking about movies, when we look at all the movies that have come out over the last 10 or 20 years, so much truth is being told in movies, and what is called predictive programming, which is telling the people what is coming, and they think it's a fiction.
So Kim, what motivated you to be part of the Safe and Effective Roadshow?
Well, various reasons. Firstly, I'm very distressed by the number of people who've been vaccine injured, because when you hear their stories, when you actually hear the first-hand stories of what has happened to people and how it's ongoingly impacting their life, you can't not be affected. And what is really, really upsetting is that the government aren't talking about it. Mainstream medicine on the whole are not talking about it, except for the doctors who've stepped out and formed things like organizations like NZDSOS. And the media are completely silent over the whole thing. And this is just a crime. It's really a crime. And I feel like it's almost akin, or maybe we could say akin to people being put on the trains at World War II. It's the same thing happening again, but people don't really realize it. So unless people stand up, and I've never seen myself as what I would call an activist. I don't know if I do call myself an activist, but I never, ever thought I would be doing this. I remember sitting at my desk about 6 to 12 months into the pandemic, and sitting there, and because I was researching all this information, it was taking so much time, and I didn't know why I was doing it, because just wanted to be working. I wanted, like everybody, just to be getting on with my own life, seeing my clients, running my programs. That's what I'd been doing for years. And then all of a sudden I had this second job of spending all my time researching this information, and then really waking up to, oh my goodness, there's a bigger picture here, and people don't see it. And I've always been very, very drawn to seeing the bigger picture of things, whether it's somebody's personal, individual client life, or just the bigger picture of life in general. And so when I heard about this roadshow, I just thought, well, maybe it's time to share some of this information so that people don't see just, what's happening on the ground level, so to speak. It's like we get up in a helicopter and we go above the city and we see the whole vista. And then we actually get in a spaceship and we go up and we look down on the whole earth, and we just see a much, much bigger picture of why this is going on, and actually why there are deeper reasons that are actually positive. I know it doesn't seem like it, but in the bigger scheme of things, there are evolutionary, we could say spiritual reasons for why this is all happening. And for myself, what I've found is that, and I'm sure you have similar findings, is that once you understand a problem and you see the truth, it's actually a relief. It can be upsetting and shocking to start with, but actually it's a relief, because then you know what's what and you know what needs to be done. But when you're in this place of not knowing and not understanding, which is where people are with their symptoms after the vaccine, and they don't know they're vaccine injured, or whether you've got just any illness at all, any chronic illness at all, and you're searching and you're searching and you're searching and you don't know why you have it. It's very draining. It's exhausting. It's distressing. But once you get to the root cause of a problem, then the solution becomes apparent. So that is what drew me to want to contribute to this event.
Well, a lot of people are devastated when they start looking into it. This is what I found with a lot of my clients. They're quite shocked, and some of them feel, oh my gosh, I've got a death sentence because of the research that they've done. And I don't believe that's the case. And what I like about this roadshow is it's very solution based. And so what sort of people do you think should be thinking about going to this conference, Kim?
I think there could be all types of people coming to the events. It could be people who know what's going on. They know they're vaccine injured and they want to get support. They want to get some answers and some solutions. It could be people who are questioning the narrative and they're not quite sure, and they're starting to think, maybe it could be connected. I've heard people talking about this, but I don't really know much about it. And it could be people, just anybody really, who wants to understand what's really going on in the world at the moment. Why is the world in such utter chaos? What's the bigger picture? and what can we do about it? Or what can I do? What can one personally do to better one's own personal situation, but also contribute to the overall upliftment of, in a positive way, of in the world.
And I think the only way we can achieve things really on a reasonable level is when we have more numbers, and this is where community comes in. And what I like about the conference is it's going to be very, very clear. It's going to have a lot of information to not only be solution based, but also hopefully motivate people to understand more, that they can communicate with other people, so that more community become aware of the tyranny that's happened over the last 2 or 3 years and the damage that's been happened over the last few years. Because would you agree, Kim, we just do not want a repeat of this, do we?
Yeah, well, it's not just not wanting a repeat of it. It's actually people don't understand where it's headed. With the CBDC, digital ID, smart cities, it's been growing in the background for years now, where we've been slowly, like a frog being boiled in a pot, slowly trained into smart technology. So we have our smart watches, our smartphones, our smart TVs, our smart cars, and now they're heading for smart cities. And most people do not realize the reality of where this is going, because it sounds so unbelievable, and that's why we keep getting labeled as conspiracy theorists. But actually, everything so far over the last 4 years that people have been labeled as conspiracy theorists for, is all actually happened. And there's more to come if we don't turn this around. And the only people who are going to turn it around are the everyday people, because the people who are driving this are the big, powerful people at the top.
It's quite a balancing act, Kim, because I believe that fear and stress is kind of one of the root causes of the decline in health. So when we start going down that rabbit hole of smart cities and where things are heading, it's actually quite stressful. But we need to bring awareness to this, because one thing is for certain, Kim, if the people allow the governments and the elites to get their way, it means we will no longer have this freedom of speech to be able to communicate like this, because they'll close our bank accounts down. We won't be able to run our car into town. We'll be in a digital prison, and I don't think people are aware of this. And this is why, we're motivated to, educate people. We've done quite a few video productions on smart cities, and we've got to be doing more as well, because people just have to wake up and realize this is happening. Problem is, particularly in New Zealand, is it's not affecting me right now. So it's not affecting me, so they won't do anything.
Yeah.
And that's the big problem that we have. But at least this conference and the marketing for this conference is putting those on notice, and bringing awareness that these things are happening. And before we conclude, Kim, is there anything else you'd like to contribute?
I would just like to say to any naysayers or people who think this is a whole load of hogwash, that one needs to suspend belief, because it is a very polarized topic. There are those who absolutely understand what you and I are talking about. There are those who are absolutely opposed and think we should be putting our tinfoil hats on, and then there are those in the middle. And one of the things, I don't know that I did put it in my presentation, but I've actually had to take it out, because I literally can only put about 1% of what I would like to put in my presentation, and that 1% is only probably less than 1% of what could, overall, by from anybody, be put in a presentation like this. It's a massive topic. But one of the things that I did want to talk about is a thing called a ring pass knot, which is a circumference around our consciousness, where inside this circumference, a bit like a Swiss ball, we have the reality that we can integrate and we think is true. And outside of that circumference of that Swiss ball is the rest of reality. Now, the people who understand what's going on, they have a wider circumference, so to speak, and so they have more of reality, of truth, is actually inside that Swiss ball. So in order to be able to hear and believe, or even be open to believing what we're talking about, if somebody thinks it's all hogwash, you have to suspend your judgment or your belief for a moment and just be open to listening for to this information, and then you can make your draw your conclusion later. But if you don't open your mind, then you will just stay stuck in this blinkered reality. So I just invite people to open their minds.
Very well said, Kim. Thank you very much for having a yarn with me online. And if you think you'd like to go to the Safe and Effective Roadshow, there's links down there, roadshow.nz. We're still, depending on when you watch this video, there's still some early bird specials available. Dunedin, the 9th of November. A couple of days later, on the 11th, will be Queenstown. Then on the 13th will be Nelson. And then finally on the 15th will be in Wellington. And please share this video. Please comment. We really need, particularly New Zealand, we really need to get together and make people more aware of what's really going on, because there's going to be a point where if we don't, it might be too late. We don't want that to happen. I have a 15-month-old and a 4-year-old, and I'm very, very motivated to make sure that they grow up in a society where they have freedom of speech and some freedoms, particularly medical freedoms. Thank you very much, Kim.
Thank you, William.